Wow, we would have never believed this. You can listen to us on our podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. We're on Google. Go out there and listen to us when you're driving to work, or maybe when you're just sitting at home, or you're on the treadmill at the gym. Go on out there and listen to our podcast. So we're excited about it. We're glad you're excited about it too. Lunch break. Here we are with Johnny Rizo, or I should say Dr. Rizo.
Dr. J.
It still feels weird. It still feels weird.
I know when you first got your doctorate, I asked your dad, you're going to call him Dr. Rizo, and he said, heck no.
He's the doctor.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he has that on the back. He was a doctor on the basketball court. Your dad was darn good. Now he doctors people on the bicycle course.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He does.
He does. He's pretty good.
Hector Rizo, Pastor Hector Rizo. So we're glad you joined us on lunch break, because if it wasn't for you guys, we'd just be sitting here at the table talking. But I'd love to do that with you guys.
We did that a minute ago, too.
Yeah, we did.
We did it all day Sunday.
We did more than talk.
Yeah, we did. So, hey, well, I'm glad to be here with you, Johnny. So as we're here, you're a doctor is kind of a in education.
Yeah, yeah.
What was, we're kind of starting a new format here. Was that something that you set out to be, or is that something that you, when you achieved it, you looked backward and said, this is the way it should have been?
You know what? I think it's a little bit of the second. I didn't imagine going and getting my doctorate. I think I didn't really imagine going to school that long, because I wasn't that good at it. But then once I got there, I was like, I look back and I see the things that I'm working on, but I see the things that I've always been in love with. Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, this is
so what do you do right now as a doctor?
So
you're a doctor of
what I do
psychology?
Is a few things.
Is that right?
So I'm a school psychologist.
Okay.
Which is I'm a psych guy, man. I'm in the trenches. That's what they call guys like me. We're in the trenches. We're actually in the school. Mm-hmm. We're not in a clinical setting. So we come across trauma like at the gates. We come across trauma in the classrooms when the kids are just going out of control or wanting to kill themselves.
There's always something behind the meltdown, right?
Oh my God, yeah. Never has there been a time where someone has been like an obnoxious person or a mean person for just fun. It was always because there's an underlying issue going on.
So what was your reason?
I could give you a ton. Hey,
well,
I've done the biggest experiment.
I know with me, I'd rather be bad than stupid. And that was kind of a label that would get hung on me because of my speech impediment and just falling behind. So I would rather cause trouble than not pass a test.
I know you deal with some really interesting, like sometimes like enraging kind of things. We were talking about this yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Do you see kids that go through like the worst things in the world, and they should like want nothing to do with their family or whatever, and yet they still love them?
Yeah, that's a painful thing, because I'm in situations where I'm powerless, where these kids, maybe they're a foster kid. They're in a foster home that they don't like. They were sexually abused by their stepfather. And then on top of that, they're not getting along with the people in their home that they're just essentially visiting. So for me, there's a frustration in it because I'm powerless in the sense of what's in the environment. But at the same time, that really kind of puts me in a humbling position where it's like, okay, as much as I'm powerless in their situation, I have the power to teach them how to deal with every situation. Yeah. So don't get me wrong, though, man. I get angry a lot. Yeah. I was telling you, last week or on Sunday.
Yesterday.
That was just yesterday. I cry a lot at work because it's just, anger, but sometimes it's just sad trauma. Trauma's hard to deal with. It is. It's not fun, but I think that's something that the Lord created me for.
Yeah,
I like it. I like something that you had said, Johnny, because the audience doesn't know this, but you said you weren't good at school. Take that back a little bit, because to set the stage, you grew up as a PK. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that PK's pastor's kid, so that's gonna.
Can I interrupt you before we go there?
Sure, you always do. Why does he ask permission?
So I thought before we go back, you're going to tell us how you got there, right? That's where you're going, right?
We can do.
So my question is, this is the question we ask every guest. What is something? Because Tom, you won't pay me if I don't.
Yes, I won't.
So what is something? something that people don't know about Johnny Rizo. Dr. J.
Hey, don't open the closet. Let the skeletons fall. They don't want that.
Well, I don't know. With Johnny, it might be okay.
You know what? I think what people don't really know about me is that I'm not that social. I'm really not. Like,
No, that'd be hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
like I'm tired
Like,
a lot.
I'm pretty sure you're lying right now.
No, I would say like one thing that I've realized is I'm tired a lot.
Yeah?
Like what makes me appear that I'm social is I'm very animated when I interact.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of energy to keep up.
Yeah, it
But
does.
don't you a lot of the draining part is just the trauma that you
I think yeah. I think now over the years, I think I lost energy, because I would say like at church, on Sundays, 3 out of the 4 Sundays, if I didn't greet, I probably wouldn't talk to anybody.
Do you think that it's something that developed over time, or were you always like not as social?
No,
Or
I don't remember being not social like this.
okay, so now it's because me at an older age, I kind of relate to that, like being more
Yeah.
like some, because I was always like you, like hey, being out in front of everybody and want to talk to everybody, and now I'm like I need some time away now.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's like,
I
kinda
think that's
changes,
one
you know?
thing, and it's kind of because, I think there's a lot more anxiety. I think that I have naturally just from experiences.
Yeah.
But I would say probably just energy. I don't have the energy that I have. So if there's something that people don't know about me, is like,
Well, you get drained every day from dealing with that.
I think that might be
Yeah.
that. I think that has a lot to do with, and plus I have 2 little ones at home.
You do.
That makes a
You
big
know what I
difference.
mean? Yeah, I
You've
have
been
it.
there. You're way past that, but you know.
Sleep is overrated when you have little ones at
Oh
home.
man,
Yeah.
Especially when you have more than one.
Yeah.
I tell people one's kind of a hobby.
Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, because I used to go home and go, hey, can I hold Taylor for a while?
Yeah,
Tiffany
yeah.
goes, well, I want to hold her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then after a while, when you have 2, there's no option.
Oh
Well,
man.
3 is a whole different ballgame, Tom.
I've
It's
never-
like they rotate shifts.
Oh man.
It's like you never get any sleep, but they're like,
I've
oh,
never
we're gonna
been
get
that.
sleep because we got. Yeah.
It's a lot. And I
Are you
think
gonna have
that
a
has-
third one?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, God willing.
I
God
like
willing.
that. I
So,
like that.
Tom, I'm turning it back to you.
No, that's good. So Johnny, I think it's important because as Johnny Rizo, Dr. Rizo was telling us, is that when he's looking back in retrospect, he didn't plan on going to school that long because he didn't think you were good at it.
No. You know what's cool is I have a night job now. I'm a professor for Fresno Pacific University.
Oh wow! Congratulations,
Professor
Professor.
Dr. J.
Yeah. So I teach the master's program for the school psychologists,
Ooh,
and I supervise all the interns and things like that, just to make sure
Good
that
job,
the new
John.
crop is coming out good. We want to make sure.
And are they?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Hey, we're putting them to the meat grinder, man. We're putting things first. We're just doing a lot of good things.
So can I ask a question? Do they listen to you? Because I remember when you were in the classroom. Do you go back now and think, wow, I was that kid?
I do.
When you sit in the classroom
I
and you go,
do.
there's a young
I
me, there's a young
do.
me, there's a young me. I'm
I do.
getting my payback right now.
So when I started my first class this semester, I started off my speech with, I hate school. I hate the classroom. That was the weakest area of my life.
Uh-huh.
Even my doctoral program, my friend says that, because my colleagues in the program, they said that the carpet in the back of the program had burn marks because I just paced the whole time. The whole time, because we had class on Saturday for 8 hours. So it's just, but that leads me to what I'm saying is I hated school because I wasn't good at it. And not only was I not good at it, but the format back in the day, even when we were in church, the pastor was meant to speak for 45 minutes
and
to
you're like,
junior
how in
hires
the
and high
heck?
schoolers.
How do I?
Yeah. And then for me in school, what I realized, I think in retrospect, is my attention processing. I'm not really into the disability thing. I know I'm a psychologist, but I would say my attention processing was definitely different than other people. So it was hard for me just to sit.
Mm-hmm.
I was what we call hyper vigilant. I had more energy. I wanted to interact more. I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And
Let's do a interactive lesson.
Yeah, right. So there wasn't an interactive lesson. They didn't have the students talking back then. There wasn't break systems.
Yeah.
There wasn't a visual schedules, knowing what to do next.
Yeah, but it wasn't because you're stupid. Obviously, with the doctoral degree and everything else, you're and I talked to Ludavia, right? Because and you can relate to my son Michael because of, you and I are similar, and so is he.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know what to do with him. I was like, and so I started sending him with me. It was because he's homeschooled. Like, hey, well, just send him with me a couple days a week, and I'll take care of him. But I was like, he's not stupid. He's bored, and that's what you were. That's what I was in school. That's why we got in trouble a lot.
And I think that's the one thing that we, when we look at kids and when we look at people, we look at situations, we realize that attention is something that is different for everyone. But one of the things that we really got to work on is what to do with our boredom. Really, it's really something that is something that we're trying to work on even to this day. But yeah, man. Oh yeah, I get it.
So growing up as a PK, did that put pressure on you? I know my girls both said it did. I mean, my daughter Taylor got to the junior year in high school before someone's like, "Hey, you're a pastor's kid."
And real quick, for those who don't know, what's PK?
It's a pastor's kid, and that's not a positive connotation.
Not always. Yeah, often it's not.
I could say
right.
all the time when you're referred to as a PK, that's a negative connotation.
Yeah, still to this day.
Yeah,
I
to
get
this
it.
day.
I
Is
get
it?
it all the time. Yeah, even my older age. I am a little wild though. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I am a little wild.
Well, you know what's funny is when I was growing up and I was friends. I remember talking with another friend of like a mutual friend of both of ours, and he was like, "Yeah, those." And this is when we were younger. It's like those pastors' kids
Oh, the worst.
or yeah, they're crazy.
Well,
they're
that's
wild.
the worst.
And I was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I don't get it, right? Because I'm kind of foreign to that. And,
yeah. Well, you were worse than me though. No, you were worse than Pastor.
probably was.
So.
He gave you a run for your money. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that.
You were my youth leader. Isn't that the wild part?
Yeah. You know what was crazy, Johnny? Because,
thanks, Johnny. Throw me under the bus.
Because there again, I've always had a heart for you, but I've always had a heart for kids that are a little more of a handful than most. I think you remember the way I would deal with it. I remember.
Oh, is that why we're so close?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I always kicked him out of school. You know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But Johnny came in and he came in with his dad the first day of. He was being pulled out of public school because he was hard to handle in public school. So his dad thought,
Just a
we'll
little bit.
take him to a private school and we'll make that better. Johnny's like, yeah, let's see how long they keep me. But as Johnny was there, his dad had a problem with something that I really didn't. But it was, it was a little disrespectful. You want to explain how that happened?
And I think that kind of leads to something that it's a part of the story. Because I think a part of what my story is a frustration.
Mm-hmm.
But that frustration didn't come from me just, I had great parents.
Mm-hmm.
They taught me a lot. They loved me. But I would say the public school couldn't handle me anymore because, I really, I didn't know how to do a lot. I kind of felt like a failure all the time. Yeah. Really, you kind of feel like a failure. That's why, when you talk about your son and not being able to, sometimes you don't fit in.
Yeah.
When you don't fit in, what people forget is you don't feel like you belong.
Right.
And those are the things that we're constantly trying to work on. But that leads up to the meeting of, by the time I was at this meeting, I was going to go to Valley High. It was more of a punitive thing. Mm-hmm. I was in trouble. Yeah. Oh man, it was a big.
Isn't that how most of the kids got about?
Oh yeah, it was a big trouble thing for me.
A lot.
But we were as an initial intro meeting. I had my sunglasses on. Right. I had my sunglasses on. And you were okay with it meeting going on. My dad wasn't. He's like, take the sunglasses off. And this is how I was raised too. That's why people sometimes thought I was undisciplined. It's like, nah. My dad's like, take the sunglasses off.
Oh, I know your parents.
Yeah. And I was like, no. I told my dad no.
And I go, Hector, it's not a big deal. I did. Yeah, it was a moment. And I said, it's not a big deal. I did, Mike, if I ever, I didn't have a problem with the defiant
But
kid.
his parents are like my parents.
Huh?
They're old school.
Hey, did he ask you to step out, or did you go out on your own?
I went out on my own.
So
I go, let me give you guys a moment.
So it just took one whack. And the glasses were off.
Well, that's why he stepped out. So that
it was off, and I don't know.
Plausible deniability.
And I don't know if you knew this, but
that was a parent moment, not a school moment.
The first day of school, going to Valley High, I told my parents, my mom came to wake me up. I was like, I'm not going to school. Uh-huh. And she's like, no, you're going to school. I was like, there's nothing you can do to make me go to school. And she's like, all right, well, Dad, Hector, come on. And then my dad came in. He's like, son, you go to school. I was like, no, I'm not. You're not going to make me go to that school. And I just saw my dad lunge towards me. And I'm like on the floor, scared. And he pulled me off the floor, threw me against the wall, and he slapped me like a few times. And for the first time, usually my mom was like, she would always be on our side. This time, I heard her saying, "Get him, Hector! Get him!" And I was like, I was tripping. I was like, "What the heck?" My brother's waking up. He's like, "What's happening?" And then my dad stopped, and he's like, because he was under control. He looked at me. He's like, "You're going to school." I was like, "I'm going to school." And I put my pants on. And I went to school.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think you deserved it?
I did. You know what we don't realize is I know it's gonna be a long story short about ADHD, or I don't even like saying the word ADHD because I don't have a disability. I'm not disabled, but the long story short is structures and discipline's key.
You know, I love that you said that. Sorry, Tom. I love that you said that because ADHD, you know, that's something we can relate on. And I think a lot of people like to use it as a crutch, right? And I strongly, vehemently disagree with that. And we can get into more about Adderall and stuff, which you and I can relate on too in a minute. But people use it as a crutch when you can take, and you've said this many times, Tom, you can take your biggest strength and make it your biggest weakness, or your biggest weakness and make it your biggest strength. And I think you and I have both taken that weakness, supposedly per society, and made it one of our biggest strengths.
And you know what's so interesting about it all is there again, I had a speech impediment, which they did not know how to diagnose or deal with in the 60s. I mean, it was just like, hey, you go into the special class with everybody else. Yeah. And they called you retarded. Yeah. And that was what it was.
But have you turned it into a strength?
Well, it was one of those things where there was nothing else but that. Because I appreciate the professionals that were there in the day. They learned that I wasn't dumb. Yeah. But I just had a speech impediment, and they would just put me back in mainstream class, but there was no techniques to help me get better. So what I did is I had to work on it myself, and realize, and I don't think I really got it until I became an adult, that it was more of a motor skill than anything else. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't something that was wrong with me.
Well, I believe in a way it did become one of your biggest strengths, right? Because it was something that you had to overcome, but that overcoming helped you achieve greater things. And
it was a fear, because I remember when they would come in with the speech test and the hearing test, like, my friends would go, "Later, Tom, we'll see you in a month." It took about a month to, sort through it. But I appreciate the professionals of the day. And I mean, but I'm saying there's nothing you can just sit back and say, it'll get better. You have to do something about it.
And at the end of the day, no matter what your disability is, no matter what your situation is or disorder, or whatever it might be, the solution is repetition. Yeah. Constant repetition in a way that you're engaging all of your senses, your motor, your visual, your auditory, everything.
So do you think playing sports was a benefit for that for you?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Johnny played every sport. I know it was
for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Sports was a huge part of my life. Well, because I didn't do good in school. Like, I didn't have passing grades. Like, I every semester was always trying to figure out how to just get a 2.0. Right. So,
but it wasn't because the academics were hard for you.
Well, you know what? The thing is my attention was so bad. Right. I couldn't learn.
If you could learn how to pay attention, you could learn the material.
Yeah, but this is gonna paint the picture. One of the things that really put things in perspective for me is when I started BC. Graduated Valley High.
Did you go straight to BC?
Yeah, I went straight to BC. I was 17, and I was in the class with special ed students. I was in the class.
Well, they consider the ADHD kind of a form of special ed, though, right?
Well, no. It's only if it's severe enough where they need it. But there's a long continuum of ADHD. But when I was in the class, I could tell I was in the clearly with students who were disabled, and my math level was the same as theirs. It was really the same. It was commensurate. It wasn't a bad test. I was at their level. And that really kind of put things in picture of oh my God.
But for a different reason.
Yeah. Nevertheless, it was still there.
Right.
You still had to deal with it.
Yeah. I still had to make a step-by-step process.
Because without dealing with it, it wasn't going to get better.
Nah.
So what led to a bad student deciding, that's a long road to get a doctorate, right? And I know there's a lot of time in between, but what led to, hey, I'm going to BC, and then now I'm going to continue going to college.
Yeah, well, as a kid, I think this is a reflection I got like in the last few years was, I felt like a failure.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduated high school, like, what was I good at?
Football.
What was I good at? Sports, and I knew I was 5'9". Come on, what was I good at? My hands? I wasn't good with my hands. I wasn't good academically. I really wasn't good at
Causing mayhem.
I was good at being charismatic.
Yeah.
I was very good at controlling a setting or situation. Mm-hmm. So that's why when I went to BC and I saw those students I was with, I wanted to prove to myself that I can do that very thing that I couldn't do before.
Self-improvement.
Yeah.
It's and I'm not sure the right word I'm looking for, but it is self-improvement. John, did that start in some fashion when getting to like yourself and know yourself? I know that did with me. I had to come to the point when I realized it was a motor skill that I didn't have, that I'm like, well, I'm not that bad. I started realizing I wasn't that bad. Because I was made to, like you said, feel stupid, so I offset it by being big and strong.
I think, for a while, it was just hard for me to even understand. I think because, like, when I was in BC and when I was at Cal State, I was just grunging through it. I really didn't know what I was doing. I knew, what, I think it takes me back to being a PK. I felt like when I was in my late teens and early 20s, people expected me to be a failure. At the church, when
they
I
don't
was
expect much out of you when they hear that acronym.
When I was 16, my parents were called bad parents. I was called a bad kid. I was called a bad kid. They were told to stay away from me. Yeah,
because of behavior.
I was.
That's super interesting. I don't know who said that. I never, and I knew you all that time. I never thought you were a bad kid.
No, you knew me. You knew me.
But I understood you also.
And I think a lot of the times, if you didn't know me, I was intimidating. My behaviors were intimidating, and it was because and this is again one of my strengths. I don't see rules the way other people do. Telling me there's a rule doesn't make me follow it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's just still not the way I work. But I think.
All right. Now I know what not to do.
Yeah. But I think that's why for me, Pastor Tom, I was just grunging through it for so long. I was so hungry to prove to people that I can. I just can. I am worth something. I'm not that stupid kid. But I had such a big mouth. And it just made people think that. It really did.
But you said what was on top of your mind.
Yeah.
You thought it, you say it.
Well, and he also, and I could say this because I did the same thing. He would say things to stir the pot or to like mess with people and get a reaction.
I love shock value.
Yeah.
I loved it. But those those are what made people, as much as they loved me, is what made people want to stay away from me. And my I would say my late 20s, it hit me one day. I was in a social setting, and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I talking to people like this? How am I? And I was like, this is me typically. And I had to really wake up to just a self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
And I think, I think for Pastor Tom, for me, when I woke up to those things that were holding me back, what I realized is, because I think the things that were the me believing that I had ADHD, I took Adderall for almost 10 years. And so when I had to say I didn't want to take it anymore because of several different reasons, the side effects were just killing me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say, okay, what's wrong with me? Is there something really wrong with me? And I had to really look myself in the face, in the eyes, and say, in the mirror, and say, is there something wrong with me? And is it correctable?
And that's almost into the self-recreation phase, right?
Yeah, and I'm already a practicing psychologist for 5 years, and when I asked myself what's wrong with me, I already finished my doctorate program. Mm-hmm. This was already 4 or 5 years ago. This is 4 years ago. I was like, what's wrong with me? Because I faded out the meds after my program, after I didn't need to write papers for fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Adderall, because I took Vyvanse and I took Adderall and I took all those things. And you remember I talked to you about it, and I was like, I struggle with it because I was like, I don't want to be addicted to something, and I don't feel like I ever was.
Neither me.
But I was like, I know I'm taking a brain altering substance, And like, is it right? Is it wrong? Like, and I asked you about that, and like ultimately I ended up going off of it because, you know, for my own reasons. But I don't feel like I need it.
Well, you know, I always believe this, and I think both of you guys are in the same camp, that God's word says that he created us,
Yeah.
knitted us together in our mother's womb, and that all good gifts come down from the Father of lights. And those are two hard things to compare when you're living in our skin as kids.
Yeah.
You know, and I think those are things that you come to deal with when you're thinking there's something wrong with me. You know, I got to get off this, or I've got to change this, or I've got to change the way I feel about the person I'm looking back to in the mirror. You know what I mean? Because psychological addiction, when you're looking at and you like the way you look, you know, it's like, you know, physical dysmorphia.
Yeah.
What do they call it?
Dysmorphia.
Dysmorphia. I'm looking back at a guy that I haven't lived with ever.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting smaller, and you're like, who in the heck is this person?
Yeah.
You have to find out that you're okay.
Well, and you're making me think, and I want to tease something out for the audience watching, because I know we need to wrap up soon. But I'd like to pull Johnny in on it too. We've been working with, you know, this, like Tom and I are working with some groups with trauma and PTSD and stuff. We're starting to do some content around that and bring in guys and expose that, because there's a lot, like, people are afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think people are less afraid now to talk about it than they were like maybe 10, 15
Well,
years ago.
it depends on the group you're in.
Yeah.
Because it could involve losing your job if you talk about it in the wrong group setting. But if you're out to get help, and you're part of a group like Shielding the Front Line, 911 at Ease, things like that.
But I think it's important for people to know that they're not the only one dealing with it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's kind of the resources we want to bring. And Johnny, if you want to be involved in that with us, it would be fantastic.
But I think the thing is, Mike, is about medication. You know, what I had it, you know, the big reason why I took it was because I thought I needed it to write the hard stuff or the stuff that was boring.
Yeah.
A lot
I feel
of stuff.
you.
You know, because it's so grueling to do it without. And the thing is, and on top of that, I was almost trained in a way to think that I had ADHD, right? I was trained that there's something wrong with my frontal lobe, and because there's not enough certain transmitters in my frontal lobe, wow, that's why my attention's more or less, and that's why I gotta move more or less. And then I was like, okay, is there something wrong with me? And I had to really, and I'm telling you, this is already after my doctorate, I had to hit the books. I had to figure out what the heck, because this is why I'm supposed to be helping those kids in the class, but yet I can't do it on my own. You know, I had to put my money where my mouth was. It was a recreating of experience, because I think that's what the Lord took me to.
Practice what you preach, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I had to figure out, why was I taking the medication? And you know what the real reason was? It wasn't because I needed it to speed up things or because I needed more energy. I was anxious.
Mm-hmm.
The activities that I needed it for were the ones that made me the most anxious. So part of when I looked at myself, like, is there something wrong with me? And it's like, well, first figure out what's specifically is happening, and then try to correct it bit by bit, not try to change your life.
So you have anxiety.
Yeah.
And how do I merit or decrease my anxiety?
Yeah. Well, think about it. Somebody like me and Mike, who have to move all the time, you want us to automatically sit for 30 or 45 minutes and engage in this one activity for 30 or 45 minutes. How does that make you want to feel?
I can't do it.
You know, when I try to compare it to people, it's like it's almost like what you want to compare yourself to is sit in a car for 4 hours. That's how I feel after 5 minutes.
Well, you know what's funny is I can do that.
Oh, I can't. Oh, no way. I wouldn't even want to sit in a drive-through for one car.
Something about driving. Anyway,
Mike got me in trouble in L.A. I was on the phone.
It wasn't my fault.
I was on the phone, and we were at La Cienega, and I forgot what cross street it was. I think it might have been 3rd. And I was on the phone, and I didn't know what Mike was doing, but there was a homeless man standing at the front of my car staring at Mike. So he pulled the visor down. That man did not
He would just stare me down.
He did not like that. So he started coming to my window yelling at me. I'm like, what happened here? And Mike goes, I didn't know what to do, so I just pulled the visor down. The dude felt like he just got shut out.
I mean, why you mad dog?
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
That's a good solution.
It was a moment. I was like, this guy was like, on me. No, it was fun. It was a funny moment.
Oh, man.
So Johnny, as you did it, I mean, you've obviously become successful in what you do. What would be something you would leave with the audience if they're out there thinking, man, this is what I've got, or something similar to that? What would you tell them 1, 2, and 3 to do just to help them proceed through it?
I would say, you know what, to really, I think one of the things, let's see, that I really like the most, well, you know, the reason why I don't have to take my medication anymore, it's the most simplest things, I promise, is I plan my day out.
Mm-hmm.
I do a checklist when I plan my day out, a checklist, and make sure, okay, can I really get this done today? Can I really get this done this week? And then I kind of chunk it up even a little more, because sometimes my day's hard. Some of my things are really hard. And I even look at those point of the day and like, all right, I'm going to need a break in between that day and that time. And you know what else I do, Pastor Tom, is depending on those activities, like the ones that I used to need meds for, where I have to read 40 pages, I go take a walk and I read. I don't ever, I've given over to who I am.
Yes.
So instead of walking, and instead of, or even on the phone, I walk.
Yeah.
I'm very motor engaged. So even when I'm learning, I actively just move. So I plan my day out.
point.
I do a checklist, and each activity I make sure, okay, what's my best way I'm going to achieve that activity, and then I make sure I take multiple breaks all throughout the day, because I know I need a lot of breaks.
Because you're managing yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're doing it, I think that's something important for us to tell people is we're all different.
Yeah.
And you might need to manage yourself a little more, or at least find a way to manage yourself.
It's increasing your self-awareness.
Yes.
At the end of the day,
Self-awareness.
it's increasing your self-awareness and then keeping track if you're doing those things that are important to you.
But so do you write them all down, Johnny?
As I brought this, part of my keeping track is my journal. I write down everything.
You got your family in there. And
I always have value triggers. I have enough negative triggers, so I have tons of value triggers. So I have kids, my family, on my socks. So this is part of how I keep track. I even rate my day of how I follow
cool.
my values.
Looking at those notes kind of reminds me of this shirt.
Yeah.
1% crazy.
well, you know,
Sorry.
you know, John, and I do endorse a book, and it's called The Body Keeps Score. And I think that's the title. And I think what you're saying is, I got to have the positive there because the negative's coming, baby.
Yeah.
You know, we know that's coming. So what will give me a positive experience in my day? I used to tell people that when I did a funeral, I would hold off working out and work out after the funeral.
So smart.
You know, because I realize I'm going to have that thing. So it's
I think you're biting into that.
So
That's exactly
is there anything you'd want to leave the audience with after hearing just your journey?
Yeah, you know what? Like I said, just be very simple with your treatment, but make sure it's meaningful to you. Don't do anything because you think you have to or because people are telling you to. Do it because it's meaningful for you. Yeah. And then while you're doing that, make sure you're present more often. Life will be good.
I like that.
Yeah. Good note to leave on.
Mike, love it. Hey, guys, we're so glad you joined us today. And
Thanks for watching.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to give us any comments, we'd sure love to hear them.
Yeah.
Some chicken grease.
Have a great day. God bless.